Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm a total Final Fantasy fraud. Before playing the NES trilogy, the only Final Fantasy games I've played to completion were 5, 7, 12, Tactics A2, Crystal Chronicles, the two good Dissidias, the Theatrhythms, I guess, and Stranger of Paradise. I've played a bit of other games, like a few hours of 6, couple hours of War of the Lions, but I didn't really stick with those for very long, obviously. I tried to play Dawn of Souls on the GBA a couple times, but every attempt dies right after Garland because I couldn't tell you. Maybe I secretly hate old games, but for a video idea that I have that isn't this one, I wanted to get footage of the original NES versions of 1 through 3. So what better excuse than to stream my first time playthroughs? I can't in good faith call these blind runs. I've watched so many videos on these games between HC Bailey, Pro Jared, and more recently Backlog Buster and Seer. Certainly many others I'm forgetting, that it's impossible for me to go in with no knowledge. 1 has spells, weapon effects, and a whole stat that doesn't function. 2 is the grinding game where you have to punch yourself to get HP. 3 has the Crystal Tower. These things get reiterated to the point of being cemented permanently in my memory. Despite that, I had a good time. These overviews are going to be pretty unfocused, just blabbing about shit as I think about it, so bear with me. I did some amount of research and thinking on the jobs for one, and my party here was Fighter, Monk, White Mage, and Red Mage. I knew that Thief was considered the worst job, and with Intelligence being what it is, Black Mage didn't seem too practical either. People were telling me that while Black Mage is better than Thief, Ninja is better than Black Wizard, but I didn't use either, so irrelevant. My plan for the run was 2 guys mashing attack every turn, and 2 mages using white spells like Haste or the equipment, and mostly that does happen. Fighter literally never did a single thing but attack. Monk did the same until late game where he became more of an HP tank, occasionally using a magic equip, heal, helm, or attack depending on the formation. White Mage, yeah, he literally never stopped using the Zeus Gauntlet or heal staff after I got him. Mostly he would ineffectively slap stuff for the first half of the game with occasional curing, but spell slots are so limited in this game that I only ended up using a handful of spells. I spent all that gil asking my chat which spells were good and which were pranks, and for what? Red Mage, I don't know. This is generally considered one of the best Red Mages in the series, mostly due to all the glitches that incidentally favor it, but he was really more of a mediocre unit than anything else. Worse physical attacks than the first 2, lamer spell selection until Red Wizard comes around. Him and the Monk were pretty interchangeable near the ending aside from their HP. Most of the dungeons don't stick out in my mind super well. The Volcano was interesting because damage floors prevent encounters, and the EXP rate was quite high. And the final dungeon... Okay, I need to say this now. What the fuck? Everyone shit-talks the Crystal Tower, for good reason, I guess, but I've never seen anybody talk about the Chaos Shrine. While the encounters here are front-loaded, the Gas Dragon might be the most dangerous non-war mech enemy in the game, and I'm not joking. This dungeon is so long, the encounter rate is crazy, and since spell charges and potions are so limited, endless turns were dedicated to spamming the 3 heal equips I had. It made the ride more comfortable, but I think the dungeon was like an hour longer than 3's final dungeon, which is crazy. And Chaos has instant kill spells. And the life spell doesn't work in battle. And there's no Phoenix Downs. So like, what the fuck? The real shit was the Marsh Cave and Ice Cave. Unsurprising if you've played this game before. First off, the Marsh Cave has these linked chests, where if you grab the contents of one chest, then another in the dungeon will be empty because they're tied to the same flag, I guess? Cool idea, but correct me if I'm mistaken, this is the only time in the whole game this ever happens. I can't remember any video I've seen of this game ever mention this. It's a cool idea, and one that I don't recall ever happening again in any future game I played, but ditching it after such a short amount of time was one of the oddest things in the game. Anyway, yeah, this is the dungeon with the wizards, so called because they deck you in the soft spot for huge damage compared to what you've been enduring up to this point. I didn't have much trouble here thanks to foreknowledge and chat assistance, but it definitely put me on edge for the next significant portion of the game. The Ice Cave though? Fuck this place. Will every job... Oh, it's Astos. Well, oh, okay. The encounter with the Astos clones that ambush you and spam rub is some serious Kaizo hack shit. I think I didn't get ambushed by them a single time. Their HP being dog water doesn't matter when they only have one tactic and can use it as much as they want, whenever they want. The only reason I got through this place was because they stopped showing up, so it's not like I overcame anything with superior tactics. The guy pulling the troll levers just fell asleep. The game looks great, by the way. Limited as the technology is, they really put their all into the presentation. The colors look great, I never got tired of the single battle theme, which is a real testament to Nobuo Uematsu's musical prowess. The constant rainbow effects when pausing, or doing anything really, is really charming, and there's so many enemy sprites. I don't know if this is actually true, but it feels like 1 has twice as many unique enemy sprites as the future games. I was seeing some new creature every 30 to 60 minutes, even to the final dungeon, and I'm not even counting chaos there. Recolors are expected, but every new critter I saw was another moment to be impressed. This eye creature might not be the beholder, but damn, is that a great looking replacement. If there's anything about the game that I didn't like, it's things having to do with it being an old JRPG with some antiquated systems. I didn't mind having to remember stuff that NPCs told me. I actually relished in the opportunity to travel back to a period without quest markers and having to do the work yourself. Mostly what I mean is annoying shit like the limited inventory system, how equipment is randomly shoved in people's pockets when you find it, there being only one type of potion and you have to keep menuing back to it after every one drank, only being able to buy one potion at a time, which takes forever even with auto-fire and speed up, having to go to a separate menu to check if a sword or armor is statistically superior, and even then certain swords might not be because of crit rates. Ugh. While these specific things got ironed out through the NES trilogy, they're all still mechanically old games without any modern quality of life features. When I took a break in the middle of these 3 games to record some Final Fantasy V footage for something, I was like, damn, so this is what playing a real game feels like. Like the lamest version of Rock Lee taking the weights off you can imagine. You know what I'm really surprised by was how I didn't really need to grind. I did a couple times really early on because EXP values are so bad, but they seesaw the other way so dramatically in the later dungeons that I was stunned how the game seemed to have a natural level curve. I really wasn't expecting that from a JRPG this old. The encounter rate was the really bad part though. A lot of times before I got the airship, I would ask my chat where to go, not necessarily because I was too lazy to go talk to NPCs and write down their information, but because the idea of walking slowly through the overworld or sailing through the seas to explore was a deeply unpleasant thought. Encounters, even at their fastest, take forever. Fleeing is only guaranteed on the weakest of enemies, and the ineffective thing ensures you can't just brainlessly hold A through fights, so the speed up key is of limited use. Out of all things that 3 improved on, that might be the best one, and I'm not joking. I know that's just how old games were designed, but it gave me a legitimate feeling of despair having to park on the single tile of landable field so I could slowly walk through a bunch of forest and river tiles over to a stupid town that I might not even have to go to. Overall though, Final Fantasy I is still good. If I ever play it again, it definitely won't be on the NES, but I had a fun time. Final Fantasy II was my favorite of the trilogy. Yes, seriously, but I do fully realize it's with the understanding that I basically already knew everything about it. It's one of the most infamous games in the series for so many reasons. The sorta random stat growth, slow level growth of spells and weapons, punching yourself in the head for HP, a wacky level curve, and several shittily explained game mechanics that all work against each other. In that way, it's more of a prequel to Final Fantasy VIII than the Saga games. I knew about light armor being better, armor having a magic penalty that the game never even hints about. The blood sword is overpowered, Toad is overpowered, don't walk too far west or you'll get walloped by fucking rhinos, agility is overpowered, shit like that. And because I was already informed of the systems, I was able to bend this game to my will. Seriously, if you know how to exploit this game, it's one of the most exploitable in the series. Maria was my frontliner and she maxed maxed out her dodge stat to 1699% by the midpoint with 99 agility. Her agility was actually over 99 at some point. It was A0 or something, but that fixed itself somehow. I looked back at Some Call Me Johnny's review of Final Fantasy II after completing this game, and I look at his HP values and I'm like, holy shit, man, how long did it take you to do that? Not that I can blame him though, even though I totally destroyed the game and want to say shit like, you guys all suck at Final Fantasy II, the game is easy, you're morons, I'm smart, and some such. I can't in good faith do that, because 2 goes out of its way to piss you off at every chance it can muster. People can talk shit on the pick-a-dick doors all they want, but heavy armor is such a giant, massive fuck you for anyone who tries to play this game like a normal person, because it has literally no advantage over its lightweight counterparts. It's more expensive, only gives a slight defensive upgrade over the light equipment, gives a catastrophic amount of magic and evasion penalty. There's no reason to equip it, but it's in the game anyway. You do not under any circumstances want to HP tank in this game. You either want your evasion to be cranked to high heaven, or have as much elemental defense as you can muster so enemy spells won't randomly fuck you. Around the black and white mask part of the game, I constantly had people ask me in my chat, how is your HP so low this late into the game? When are you gonna start hitting yourself for HP? Because that's just what the game's reputation is now. But aside from the odd party magic attack, which was a benefit if anything because it was the only reliable way I could get my HP to rise, having Maria as my sole frontliner was actually ideal because it meant she was getting targeted by every enemy, meaning all the agility growths were going to her, meaning she literally could not be hit for the majority of the game, and agility is such a snowbally stat. The more you have, the more you'll get. And magic penalty, or magic interference, I think it's officially called. What the fuck were they thinking there? Another common complaint is having to spam status spells like Life or Asuna to get them to work properly, when in reality it's your equipment severely fucking you over and you literally have no idea why. It is insane to me that it took until Pixel fucking Remaster to actually display this as a stat. As far as I can tell, it doesn't impact damaging spells or cure, but anything else has a higher and higher chance of failing if you do logical shit like give your healers heavy armor and shields. All shields have 70% magic penalty. 70! What the fuck? There's no way to intuit this. Maybe you can assume the heavy armor is impacting you, but shields? You'd have to be either insane or a moron to assume that giving a shield to your white mage would be a bad idea. Bows give 70% penalty too, the only weapon usable from the back row, but I think weapons stopped giving penalty after the NES version, so that's fine. I also had people telling me to give my back row people bows, but again, I was playing the NES version. I don't need that magic penalty. The early game is also so painful. I think part of this was self-inflicted because I didn't want to spend money on the boat and airship, and also I frequently forgot what town names were. But I was fighting the level 1 areas, like the goblins and bees and shit, for an insane amount of time. The early backtracking is so egregious, and was especially fucked up because I think without the abundance of early brain-dead encounters, Maria's dodge growth wouldn't have gotten so out of hand so fast. Fleeing is also infamously fucked up in 2, not as bad as 3 because there's no defenseless debuff. I was able to flee from just about everything late game, barring unfleeable enemies, because, again, Maria. But between the ludicrous encounter rate, the still existing ineffective shit, not being able to run from anything, and even smaller shit like, oops, you walked 3 tiles too far to the left, zombies and rhinos be upon ye, it's no wonder no one has any idea how the shit this game works. The encounters are kind of a game-wide problem, actually. I think this specific formation with the purple zombies and other undead shows up even in the few final dungeons. The first game had constant new things to find and fight. This game had maybe one unique sprite that never showed up anywhere else, and it was the final boss. Yeah, you refight the fiends in the Chaos Shrine, but they were just the fiends again, not zombie carry. Anytime you fight a boss in this game, it'll probably be a random encounter the next dungeon. Even the fucking Emperor isn't immune to this. At least Garland was unique. being fair, I can actually imagine this happened because the stat, weapon, and magic growth system probably took a shit ton of development time to make sure it worked properly. Considering even modern games have this do a thing and you get better at it system in various ways, it's legitimately impressive that they managed to make it work as well as it does in this NES game. Or Famicom, whatever. But seriously, it might have some quirks and unintentional features, but it's working almost totally as intended. I am forever going to be impressed by that. And speaking of impressive, holy shit, look at this map. I'm not being ironic or disingenuous here. Isn't this the coolest thing ever? A fucking functioning globe in an NES game? It's impractical as all hell, and I ended up using a GameFAQs map or something later, but Nasir is working some serious wizardry to put this in here. But aside from all that, there are still some more obvious things that people complain about that are still valid. I mentioned the pick-a-dick doors, but the dungeons are just heinously designed. I used a few maps while playing 1 later on in the game, but while I tried to hold off in 2, I had to fold because the dungeon layouts just suck and there's troll paths everywhere. So many chests are jokes, having 1 gil or 10 gil or a potion or a start of the game armor, being led to by overly long straight hallways with encounters every 3 to 5 steps. I kept forgetting which way I was going because the overworld character would always face the camera after encounters, which was especially irritating. A lot of fights you need magic for. Almost every boss has a defense stat I would classify as overtuned, so you either require elemental spells to hit a weakness or berserk to punch through them directly. That's not even talking about Toad. For real, if you don't care about handicapping yourself, get Toad as fast as possible, and do nothing but spam it, because I think I can count the amount of mid to end game enemies that are immune to it on one hand. There were chest monsters that had boss music that were vulnerable. Even the fucking Emperor in his first encounter is toadable, and due to a glitch that I didn't exploit, you can make the final boss Emperor toadable. Just like Final Fantasy 1, I bought all these spells, but it ended up being mostly ice for early game bosses, cure on everybody, life just in case, and 90% Toad Berserk Holy Osmos. Osmos can steal MP from anything, even enemies that don't have MP, so it's literally infinite ethers. The rotating party member cast can cause some stress for people, but you really don't have to worry about them. Just carrying around some bows to keep them from stealing Maria's early game agility was good enough for me. Ricard was actually strong enough that I just gave him a sword and let him swing away, same with Leon, but they ultimately could just be ignored. I enjoyed the total cakewalk that this game accidentally ended up being, and because of that, this is my favorite of the 3, even if it does suck at explaining any of its anything. I enjoyed it enough that I bothered to buy the Pixel Remaster collection on Steam when it was on sale, and started up 2s, and was immediately disappointed. I'd liken it to Majora's Mask 3D, where it seemed keen to remove anything that was unique or quirky to make it fall in line with the other games. You can attack and get attacked physically in the back row, just taking half damage. Chests that had joke contents like 1 gil were given actual rewards, like several hundred gil. The soldiers in Finn that used to insta-gib you now do pitiful damage and are easily escapable. Why do these things? Yeah, they were annoying in the original, but being annoying and stupid was part of its identity. Maybe that sounds silly to some of you, but I do not think old games should have all of their jagged bits sanded off for the sake of conforming to the series. Between this, 1's Pixel Remaster removing the Peninsula of Power, and 5's many things that I voiced my displeasure on before, the more I dislike them generally. This is the kind of thing that people fear when remakes come out, that the new thing is intended to replace the old, to get rid of all its quirks, as if the old has no worth anymore. I really dislike Metroid 1, but I would never want Zero Mission to outright replace it, and in fact, Zero Mission has Metroid 1 inside of it, which should be the goal of any remake, if possible. The Pixel remasters are amateurish in so many ways. I mean, look at this. This isn't even an hour into my playthrough. The idea that a remake with this obvious of a formatting problem is intended to replace even the GBA version is laughable. Well, that got a bit heavy. How about some Final Fantasy III? This game I probably knew the least about of the trilogy. Obviously this is the first job system game. There's a couple dungeons and bosses that require specific jobs, and the Crystal Tower is infamous for a reason. To get that middle point out of the way, the forced job segments didn't bother me. I thought it made sense for the first game in the series with changeable stats and tool sets to make use of that as much as they could. And even when they do, the segments don't last long at all. The two mini dungeons are super short. You can immediately untoad yourself for any entrance that requires toad. Garuda is just mashing jump with 4 characters for 2 minutes without any kind of dungeon before him. The fight just happens right away. I think the worst forced job segment was the splitting enemies cave, and not for the reason you'd expect. My misery here was mostly self-inflicted because I came in with 1 Dark Knight and no mages. The actual problem was the ridiculous amount of unescapable encounters. The rate here is insane. Plus, splitting enemies give jack shit for experience, so it's not like seeing the fights through is rewarding. Unfortunately, I engaged with the job system as little as I could get away with, purely because job switching, at least in NES, is a huge pain in the ass. I haven't talked much about the inventory systems of these games, but it was perfectly fine in 1, the only issue not being able to put potions in a more convenient spot. 2's was straight up garbo, like serious ass level of a downgrade with nothing stacking, constantly dwindling space because key items take up room even after they logically shouldn't even be in your inventory anymore, and characters having to equip a maximum of 2 items per person. 3's is an improvement from that. Items stack again, and you can use anything in your inventory in battle, but there's still some key items that take up space, and you have to unequip a person completely to change their job. It really made me realize I was taking the auto-optimize system from 5 for granted. I will never complain about it again, I'm sorry. Anyway, there are a lot of chests, and a lot of potentially good weapons and armor, so I was full up on inventory space often, meaning I had to shovel shit around if I wanted to change jobs a lot. This could be remedied slightly with the fat chocobo, but I encountered him super rarely, and by the time I got the invincible with him on demand, I was at the end, so job switching ceased to be an issue anyway. This is what this meant for my party. I had one guy who was a fighter, then a knight for 75% of the game, then a ninja. One guy was a white mage for seriously 90% of the run, then changed to a seer for an hour before becoming a sage. Guy 3 was a monk, then Viking, then Dark Knight, and finally the second ninja. The final man was the most varied. He started as a black mage, but I discovered very fast that even though spell charges are much more numerous than in 1, magic is still really bad, so he became a thief once he got some boomerangs. Then he tried black magic again with Magus. Nope, still sucks. Second sage. Not counting Onion Knight for obvious reasons, and the Dragoon and Scholar for their brief required segments, I only seriously used 12 of the jobs, and if I'd replayed this game, it would be 10 since I know not to fuck with black magic. The capacity point system also sucks. I still don't exactly know what methodology the game is using to determine how much a job should cost to switch, but since I had never changed, I was at maximum 255 points most of the game anyway. Okay, actually, fuck all of this. Can we talk about job level? Not like I've seen every Final Fantasy III video on YouTube, but most of the ones I have, I don't think I've ever seen anyone talk about job level. Going back to Some Call Me Johnny again, I remember him lamenting that his Kirajas were healing for jack shit against Cloud of Darkness, and I'm seriously wondering if that was because of his Sage level. Information about this seems to be surprisingly scarce, since people don't really give a shit about 3, but from what I can gather, you level up jobs by doing things related to that job. Mostly this is physical units hit attack, mages cast spells, which is logical enough, but because spell casting is a very in-your-face limited resource, and there's no ethers, you might not be casting too often unless it's really necessary to heal or you're using haste during a boss. Spell charges might be more plentiful, but you don't know how long these dungeons are on a first go. The boss might be around the corner. Are you gonna waste a level 3 spell on Thundara? A weak as hell Thundara at that? Your mages are almost certainly going to be lagging behind your frontliners by several job levels, which bites you in the ass during bosses where your black magic sucks dick and your party cures heal for jack shit. This is 100% another thing that 5 improves on. As long as you survive the battle, you'll get progress towards the next job level, and your job level doesn't impact how good you are at casting Faraga or Curaga or whatever. Since this was the game to finally get rid of the ineffective attacks, except for magic for some some reason, you're more inclined than ever to just mash A through these fights. Very few battles in this game require you to put much thought into them anyway, and that includes the final boss, unfortunately. I definitely overgrinded for the Crystal Tower at the end, but when I was grinding, I made sure to spam magic every turn. And interestingly enough, doing this reveals that mages job level up faster than physical guys, or at least the sage does. I don't know if it's different for every job, I'm not gonna check. The point is that the system's flawed, even if it is logical. Speaking of the Crystal Tower. Now, as with everything else in this video, I am fully aware that my experience was molded by my existing knowledge of the games. Because of that, a part of me feels that the Crystal Tower was the least egregious final dungeon of the 3 games. All games of the trilogy have overly long, checkpointless final dungeons. Does 3's get more shit because of how much of a random brick wall Cloud of Darkness and the two-headed dragon are? I glossed over how the Chaos Shrine was front-loaded with difficulty because of the gas dragons, and my party in 2 was unkillable past the midway point, but these dungeons were still multiple hours long with ungodly replay times if I died. Do people count the Eureka dungeons as part of the Crystal Tower? I assume no, because it's right next to the entrance. You have no reason not to immediately use exit and get to the surface and save. Actually, yeah, it probably is because of the final boss being a fuck you stat check boss. I grinded to 55, which is way more than you'd ever think to get naturally. You'll get to the mid-40s by the time you get here. Who the hell would randomly intuit, okay, time to run in circles in Bahamut's cave for an hour? Cloud of Darkness really is a terrible final boss, one of the worst final bosses in any game I've ever played. No strategy whatsoever, just hope you grinded your HP and Sage levels enough to outpace her flare waves. I do think that kinda came back in a funny way in Dissidia, where Cloud of Darkness's entire HP moveset is based around flare wave, or particle beam in this case, but you know. But I maintain that the Crystal Tower itself isn't that much more lengthy of a final dungeon than the first 2 games. If I had died to Chaos at the end of 1, I would have been a lot more pissed than if I died to the two-headed dragon. Regardless, I am glad I played these games, and streaming them was a fun experience. Someday I really should play through every mainline game, but not right now. I am so Final Fantasy'd out right now. I gotta get back to making videos about 5, the only good one. And as a preview for the next type of video I'll make like this, I've been playing through the Battle Network collection. I know a lot of people say to just skip Battle Network 1 because it sucks. Why the hell didn't you tell me that 2 sucks too?